watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back to Capitol View. I'm David Goins. There's only one more day left to vote early. That's on Monday, and only one statewide runoff on the ballot. The increasingly negative race for the GOP Attorney General nomination. For Leslie Rutledge and David Sterling, the gloves came off this week. On the one hand, it looks like any other political race, candidates canvassing for votes. But on the other,
we need to be talking about qualifications instead of talking about smut.
Law-abiding Arkansans should have the right to use deadly force in self-defense wherever and whenever threatened. Arrogant politicians like Leslie Rutledge disagree.
I wouldn't characterize her necessarily as arrogant.
The Judicial Crisis Network spending big in Arkansas, backing David Sterling, painting Leslie Rutledge as closely aligned with the president and D.C. Democrats.
These outside groups have figured out who the most competent and most experienced and most conservative candidate in the Attorney General's race is, and they're getting behind me.
Oftentimes, and this is why people don't like what they see as politics, but voters do need to see who people are.
And Rutledge countering back, pointing to Sterling's legal representation of Cupids 5 years ago as in conflict with the AG's job to fight internet predators.
He was being paid by the pornography industry.
Cupids is not a porn store, it's a lingerie store.
This is just right in line with a long line of very colorful stories about Arkansas politics.
And in a race that might only get 5% turnout, GOP strategist Bill Vickery says which voters turn out is all that matters.
While there may be a bunch of wild allegations flying around on whichever side you choose to believe, at the end of the day, the candidate with the better ground game, that's really what matters in the runoff.
I wish it wasn't a negative tone. I've tried to keep it positive. Ms. Rutledge took it off into a ditch.
And Sterling and Rutledge continued to trade barbs throughout the week, with Rutledge accusing Sterling, as recently as Thursday, of taking money from payday lenders. New rules when it comes to carbon emissions unveiled this week by the Environmental Protection Agency, part of a bold attempt to combat global warming and clean up the air we breathe. The EPA proposing power plants cut U.S. carbon dioxide emissions 30% by 2030. But opponents worry creating the first national limits on how much carbon pollution coal-burning power plants can create will cost jobs and increase utility rates. And here in Arkansas, stakeholders are keeping a close eye on the new EPA rule. According to the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality, the state has 7 coal-fired power plants at 5 different locations. All of them will have to undergo some type of change to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases they produce over the next 15 years. How to accomplish that is up to the state, but that requirement does come from D.C.
We're heavily coal, and nobody, I think, expects coal to go away tomorrow. We are charged with reducing CO2 emissions, and we'll be looking at the best plan to achieve those CO2 reductions that will work best in Arkansas, that will be best for the consumers who are going to be paying their utility bills, and that will be best for the health of Arkansans.
ADQ hosted its first meeting with stakeholders last week. We'll host another one on June 25th. Now the public has 4 months to read those EPA guidelines and weigh in. Members of the congressional delegation already weighing in. Senator Mark Pryor saying on Monday, I have serious concerns that the EPA's proposal will undermine the affordable and reliable electricity Arkansans currently enjoy. I'll continue to speak with Arkansas stakeholders to gauge how this rule could impact our state's economy and jobs. I would urge consumers, businesses, and utilities to make their concerns heard. Tom Cotton did not release a statement through his congressional office, rather delivering one via his Senate campaign, saying Arkansans will experience more job losses and higher electricity rates because Senator Pryor is helping President Obama implement his radical environmental agenda. Just like with Obamacare, Senator Pryor did what President Obama wanted him to do, and now Arkansans are paying the price. That from Tom Cotton. The State Board of Election Commissioners reviewing a second complaint over the state's new voter ID law. The commission received its first formal complaint regarding voter ID assessment last week after the primary elections. The State Board has only received 2 complaints so far, but the ACLU of Arkansas said it received numerous voter ID complaints statewide following that May 20th primary. And a push to legalize marijuana for recreational use could make it onto the November ballot. On Wednesday, Attorney General Dustin McDaniel approved language for a measure that would make cannabis, the marijuana plant, legal. The proposal, called the Arkansas Hemp and Cannabis Amendment, specifies legalization of the use, growth, sale, and possession of the drug. The man pushing for the legislation says it's something he's been working on for years.
This basically basically ends 80 years of cannabis prohibition. This will make it legal in the state of Arkansas to grow this plant for industrial use, medical use, and yes, for recreational use.
We've said all along that Colorado and Washington are kind of like examples of the end of the line with this, where it's just totally legal. And we don't want to see that in Arkansas.
And those two states, as referenced by Jerry Cox there, already passed laws legalizing recreational use of marijuana. Similar efforts are underway in Alaska and Oregon as well, so the Pacific Northwest is covered. Probably long odds to collect the needed 78,000 plus signatures, though, to make it on the November ballot. The deadline to do so is July 7th. When we come back, our political long table, Jessica Deloach and Bill Vickery are ready to start it up. I'm David Goins. You have the Capitol View on Sunday morning.